You are listening to WEDN Eve Radio, the sound of the cosmos. Docking permission requested. Docking request accepted.
Earth, the origin of our ancestors. A century had passed since they discovered the Eve Gate, a wormhole, passage to a remote corner of the universe. New Eden. It was the largest colonization effort in the history of man. The mass settlement of hundreds of strange new worlds. We thought nothing could stop us. After the Eve Gate collapsed, countless colonies perished. The scattered survivors forgot the old world. Fragments of mankind, light years apart, lost contact. Thousands of dark years passed until humanity rose again to be with the stars. In different corners of New Eden, great empires had evolved. 4 different faces of humanity. When they clashed, the wars were merciless. Out of the years of conflict, a new kind of human emerged. One capable of immortal life. To transform into this rare breed, we pay the ultimate price. At the moment of death, our mind is transferred to a fresh clone. We have become immortal.
You are listening to a special presentation from WEDN Eve Radio, the history of New Eden then and now. We will be right back.
You are listening to WEDN Eve Radio, the sound of the cosmos.
Funding for programming here at WEDN Eve Radio is provided in part by Bob's Shuttle and Transport. With our fleet of loaner shuttles, we can provide you temporary transportation with drop-off and pick-up service. Our heavy cargo haulers can meet you on station and transport your ships, equipment, and gear to your destination. Contract and deposit required, including ship insurance. Bob's Shuttle and Transport, moving what you need to where you need in New Eden.
And as our age begins to dawn, they will learn to fear us. The birth of the Capsuleer. A sacred act, immutable and profound. Mind and machine merged. Flesh fused with power beyond mortal limits.
united with destiny, a ship and its heart. They are one. Of life in an uncharted void. A galaxy where power and wealth spur humankind. Where four great empires see the fractured renaissance of man. Wielding vast fleets, they carve their ideologies into the stars. The heroism and treachery of Capsuleers is woven into the fabric of New Eden. A story of industry, exploration, and conquest. However you choose to forge your destiny, do so with heart. New Eden is yours to shape. This is where your legend begins.
You are listening to WEDN Eve Radio, the sound of the cosmos.
You are listening to a special presentation from WEDN Eve Radio, the history of New Eden then and now. We will be right back.
The vastness of space intrigues and terrifies us. Seemingly unconquerable and unending, the universe dares us to explore. While most seek comfort in security, an exceptional few defy their fears and accept the challenge. They venture into the dark, driven by a desire for knowledge, wealth, and power. Because unlike the others, they have the courage to face the hidden dangers of the unknown. They know that with great risk also comes great reward. Let us cast off our fear. This is the age of discovery. This is our Odyssey.
From the formless void, there springs an entity more primordial than the elements themselves. In its wake, they will follow a storm.
The prophecy is true. The heretics have constructed the gate.
It must be destroyed.
Commanders, it is the dawn of a new era. Today, we hold the key to new worlds, wealth, and our independence.
Ignition sequence initiated. Stand by for perimeter evacuation.
Once the gate is active, it will change our world forever.
The fleet awaits your command, my lord.
Detecting an Imperial fleet
defend the gate.
They're getting through. Prepare for breach. They're closing in on us. Keep up the pressure.
Ignition complete.
In its wake, there will follow a storm.
Programming here at WEDN is made possible partly from contributions from corporations operating in New Eden. If you are interested in contributing to WEDN Radio, you can call us or send email. A list of contributors is available at wednradio.org, as well as news, links, special events, and more. Visit us online today at wednradio.org, and thanks for listening to WEDN Eve Radio, the sound of the cosmos.
You are listening to a special presentation from WEDN Eve Radio, the history of New Eden then and now. We will be right back.
Beam me up, Mr. Spock. Beam me up. Lock on transporters. Beam us up. Beam us up, quickly. Beam us up home. Beam us up.
Prepare to beam us up, Mr. Scott. Beam us up, Mr. Scott.
Prepare to beam us up. Mr. Scott, prepare to beam us up. Have Scotty beam us up. Beam us up. Beam us up. Scotty, beam us up fast. Stand by to beam us up. Scotty, beam me up.
Beam me up.
Beam us up now!
Earth. A world outgrown, scarred by war and burdened with the advance of our ancestors, compelled the first voyages across space in a desperate quest to colonize other worlds. Space. Its timeless boundaries and infinite horizons forged the creation of stargates that could bridge the immense distances between the stars. Through mastery of this technology, mankind ventured deeper into the cosmos. Ruthless corporations rose to power, seizing every world within their grasp. When the stargates could take them no further, they turned against each other, igniting conflicts that would last for centuries. The battles raged until the historic discovery of a natural wormhole, a celestial womb through which civilization would be reborn. The first brave pioneers to enter this portal emerged unscathed, transported instantly across the universe to a virgin system they called New Eden. Millions of colonists soon followed in their wake, lured by the vision of paradise through the astral gateway known as Eve. Spreading outwards among the stars, they embraced Eve with the greatest of expectations, the highest of hopes, and the boldest of dreams. When one day, nature conspired with fate to breed the cruelest nightmare of all. The wormhole leading to New Eden collapsed, severing young colonies from the home worlds which sustained them. It was the beginning of a dark age that would erase civilization as it was known to be. As the accumulated knowledge of millennia slowly eroded, the unfinished worlds of Eve became the graveyards of millions. On the few planets that could sustain life, the last remnants of our race struggled to adapt and survive. In time, society was reborn and the memories of our past transformed into legend and myth. The first to emerge from the darkness were the Amar, a monotheistic race fervently committed to their faith. They reinvented spaceflight and soon discovered they were not alone. The Amarians encountered the Minmatar race, dismissing them as primitive barbarians destined for a life of slavery. Moving quickly to subjugate them, they launched a merciless crusade against the Minmatar worlds. At the same time, the Gallente race flourished nearby. They created the first democratic republic of the new era and established a regional federation of independent states. The Kaldari emerged as the strongest state among them, driven by the relentless pursuit of economic and military might. Their nationalist ideals soon clashed with Gallente liberalism. Destruction and suffering once again became the defining essence of our civilization. 4 races, torn apart by 2 horrific wars. When all that remained were the smouldering ruins of lost cities and shattered lives, a universal truce was declared to end the despair. For more than a century, the races of Eve have coexisted in relative peace. Prosperity and the pursuit of wealth govern the mission of mankind. We have a destiny to meet, and the courage of our pilots will show us the path. On the strength of your wings, the fate of empires and the hopes of worlds will be decided. Take control of the destiny that is rightfully yours.
This game, you're not ready for it.
You're in the middle of this beautiful sci-fi environment, and you're seeing intrigue, the espionage, the alliances form, the power that just shifts around, and it's amazing to watch.
Viper is primary, Julia secondary.
Simple actions can have massive effects.
You can cooperate with people, compete with them, make friendships, deceive them, betray them.
It's amazing to think that it's all just other players.
More players start coming. It just starts this complete cascade of actions, and you don't know what's going to happen.
It is a free-for-all. We'll get locked up and shot instantly. People start dying left, right, and center. It's just something that you can't get anywhere else. It's just the rush like no other.
All good. Everybody's on this journey and writing their own stories, and that is probably the simplest way I can describe Eve.
Things continue to change and evolve. It's awesome. I love it. Part of Eve.
In Viridian expansion, we are also introducing corporation projects. This is a new feature that will enable corporations to create projects for their members to contribute to and to monitor the progress. Essentially what this is not something new that we are coming up with. This is what players have been doing for many, many years, because every corporation needs a direction, and every CEO or every director in a corporation realizes that it needs to be communicated to the members what we are supposed to do, what is our goal, what is our purpose, and how we achieve that. So today, all of that is done in third-party tools usually. I mean, in game to some extent as well, people are using bulletin boards for the corporation to communicate what kind of projects the corporation is engaged in and how you as a new member or as a regular member can contribute to them. So we're adding a tool that enables all of that within the client. where the corporation managers, which means the directors or the CEO, can create a new project, and then that project becomes visible to every member, and every member can see the project name, project description, what are its details, but also what is the contribution method, how they can contribute to this project, what is required of them to do for this project to progress. And then they see the progress made so far on the project. They see the number of people, of other people who have contributed, so they can get a good picture of how popular this project is in the corporation. Or maybe not that many people are doing it, so I should contribute because it might be important for the success of our organization. So all this comes from how corporations are an important structure, social structure in EVE. Basically, this is the basis of all the social interactions in EVE. People gather in corporations. A corporation is the thing you join first when it comes to establishing a group of people you play with. And every corporation having goals exposed to players helps in communicating what we are doing, how you can help. For Viridian, we are adding 5 types of projects. The first type is what we call manual, where you as a CEO or director can create a project without any contribution method. Essentially, this is just a meter to show and to communicate how well we are doing in particular scenario. So this is a replacement for what players used to do, creating like progress bars from hashtags in text to show how well we are doing, and putting that in MOTD in chat channels. So this is a replacement for that, where everyone can see the actual progression of particular project. The second type of project is about dealing damage to other capsuleers. And for that project, the creator, which is the CEO or director, can specify the organization, which can be a militia, or can be a specific alliance, or a specific corporation, or even a specific character, which means creating a system akin to bounty hunting, where the corporation members can be rewarded for dealing damage to specific character or specific organization. So this enables the corporation to monitor the participation of their members in combat, essentially. Another type of project is mine ore, where the corporation can monitor the ore mined either in specific system or specific type of ore, and later can reward people in their corporation for doing so. The fourth type of project is kill NPC, which means that the corporation can establish a project saying kill 10,000 NPCs, and then every member can contribute to that. That project can be specific to a particular solar system, which means corporations that have in mind increasing military index in specific solar system can use that to incentivize their members to do the ratting in that system specifically, because it will play into the strategic index of it. And then the last, and I think the most important one, type of project is deliver item. So this is where a corporation can ask their members to deliver specific type of item to one of their offices or to any of their offices. This essentially will enable the corporations to create buyback programs within the game. So this enables corporation to, one, reward the players who contribute for particular purpose, whether the corporation needs minerals to build a super capital or a structure. On the other hand, it enables buyback programs where a corporation will just buy the items delivered to it to later resell them in Jita.
So in Viridian, we're releasing 6 new types of dungeons or adventures, as we're calling them, called the Homefront Operations. And these will immediately be discoverable through the air opportunities. And what we're aiming for with these operations is accessible content. It's optimized for about 4 to 5 players. The intention is that a more seasoned player can take out newer players. It's different types of roles you can test out in this, and there's been a demand for something like this for quite some time in the game that we want to meet with this, and we're really excited about it because you can go in for 15 minutes, meet a couple of new people, test out being in a fleet, test out different types of roles, get decent rewards. Doesn't take a long time. If you liked, the players that you're playing with, and there's some sort of connection, you can immediately go and take on more operations and start, building the seed for, belonging in a group, being a part of something bigger. That is so important for our game.
In Viridian expansion, we'll add loyalty point taxes for the player corporations. That means that corporations now will be able not only to tax the income of their members, but also the LP. That enables the corporation to increase their revenue, basically, because the corporations will be able to sell, to exchange the LP for items in the LP stores, and then sell them for ISK. So basically, we are increasing the revenue stream for the corporations. For what that means for the members is that their corporations will be having more resources, which means better infrastructure, and better infrastructure means more opportunities, and more opportunities means more explosions. So that's our goal, just enabling the corporation to increase their revenue. And we've heard a lot from players who participate in various activities related to LP income, that often many players just keep that LP in their wallets, never spend it because it might be too bothersome for them to look for a store, so they would rather have it taken by the corporation and then monetize that way. So we are enabled that feature for them too.
All of this is coming out of these year-long studies we've been doing on the friendship machine and how the groups in our game, how they have this tremendous capacity to onboard players into a group that leads to friendship, where 73% of our existing players say that they've made a friend as a result of playing the game. We believe this will strengthen that even further and get a lot more of the players that miss that today to kind of get this on the radar, on the horizons. And for that, we are tremendously excited for.
You are listening to a special presentation from WEDN Eve Radio, the history of New Eden then and now. We will be right back.
Warp drive active. You are listening to WEDN Eve Radio, the sound of the cosmos.
Funding for programming here at WEDN Eve Radio is provided in part by Bob's Shuttle and Transport. With our fleet of loaner shuttles, we can provide you temporary transportation with drop-off and pick-up service. Our heavy cargo haulers can meet you on station and transport your ships, equipment, and gear to your destination. Contract and deposit required, including ship insurance. Bob's Shuttle and Transport, moving what you need to where you need in New Eden.
Programming here at WEDN is made possible partly from contributions from corporations operating in New Eden. If you are interested in contributing to WEDN Radio, you can call us or send email. A list of contributors is available at wednradio.org, as well as news, links, special events, and more. Visit us online today at wednradio.org, and thanks for listening to WEDN Eve Radio, the sound of the cosmos.
Docking permission requested. Docking request accepted.
You are listening to a special presentation from WEDN Eve Radio, the history of New Eden then and now.
EVE Online is approaching 20 years since its release back in 2003. In a game where players are the content, people didn't just play EVE Online. For many it was, and to some degree still is, a way of life. With the hundreds and thousands of player-driven stories and events taking place over the decades, there are a few that people will always remember. Stories that shaped the entire landscape of EVE, with people recounting year after year. And while there are only a few people still playing today who can truly claim, "I was there," the events themselves are forever immortalized in history. And so today we're going to look at some of the more defining moments in EVE Online. Back in 2003, EVE Online was a mere infant of a game. Players hadn't yet organised into the massive sector alliances that we see today, and with most people still learning the game, there was very little attention paid to the notion of screwing other people over. Just a few short months after the game released, a corporation called Mu got its members together and decided that they were going to camp one of the jump gates located in the Mara system, which was at the time a major shipping route. In the course of just a few hours, Mu had destroyed pretty much every ship that tried to jump through the system. At first, players simply stopped jumping, in the hopes that Mu would just get bored and move on. But as the hours turned into days, and the days turned into weeks, Mu had the system locked down 24 hours a day, and the economy of EVE Online was starting to suffer. Eventually, the players themselves formed what was really the first player coalition of sorts, as they banded together to try and break the camp. But Mu was simply too strong, and the attacking forces were quickly destroyed. Complaints had started to make their way to the forums, and CCP were quick to take notice. In response, the developers themselves formed its own battleship fleet, and in epic fashion drove the Mu pilots away quickly, ending the gate camp. The problem was, though, that once CCP had left, they simply reformed the camp and returned to destroying all ships that entered. Naturally, it was beyond the scope of CCP to babysit the system. They couldn't be online 24 hours a day, so something else had to be done. And soon, Mu pilots began encountering some very odd spatial anomalies that found the fleet scattered to various corners of the EVE universe. Of course, CCP never admitted to using their dev tools to teleport players across the galaxy, but even so, it didn't take long for the Mu camp to regroup and continue its harassment of the Mara jump gates. All things must come to an end, however, and eventually the Mara gate camp ended. Though time hasn't recorded the exact reason for this, one can speculate that the Mu Corporation simply did get bored and moved on. But their actions prompted CCP to make sweeping changes to how jump gate system worked, notably by fitting gun encampments around them that would deter anyone trying to camp in the future. These days, of course, gate camping is normal and something that all players are wary of when travelling. But the next time you're sitting at a gate waiting for that activation, think back to Mu and the time of not only the first gate camp, but the first time that CCP formed a fleet to fight its players. It's well known in EVE these days that subterfuge, infiltration and betrayal are all part of the game, but in 2005 a 2-year-old EVE was still finding its feet. A grand scheme was put into motion in this year though, and just like a plot of a movie, an anonymous employer contacted the guild, the Guide in Hand Social Club, with a job offer. Kill Muriel, the CEO of a corporation called Ubiqua Seraph, and to steal everything they possibly could. Nothing like this had been done in EVE by this point, but Guide in Hand accepted the contract. Members of the Corp began to infiltrate the Ubiqua Seraph's corporation on every level possible, and eventually one of the spies, Arenis, was so trusted that he became elevated into senior leadership roles, and was even known as Muriel's right-hand man. In all, it took 10 months of preparation, but once all of the pieces were in place, Arenis asked Muriel to follow him to a nearby system. Being a trusted friend, of course, she agreed, and jumping into her Navy Apocalypse battleship, a really rare and expensive ship at the time, undocked and left the system. The second Muriel was away from safety, the other Guide in Hand's pilots warped in and destroyed her ship and pod, taking her corpse as proof for the initial unknown contractor. The other spies, still located within Ubiqua Seraph, began taking everything they could that was stored in shared hangars and storage, stealing around 30 billion in ISK and ships. Not so much by today's standard, but in 2005 this was an impossible amount. Muriel was betrayed, Ubiquitous Seraph was broke, and the Guiding Hand forever defined themselves in history as the first ever contracted assassination, the first ever large-scale infiltration, and the biggest heist ever seen at the time. In the early days of EVE, one of the first real signs of a super coalition saw the rise of an alliance called the Band of Brothers. As an elite PvP group, Bob cemented its place by taking over vast quantities of space that quickly turned into an almost impenetrable fortress. While Bob had its fair share of enemies, there were very few who could actually rival its strength and numbers. One alliance that could, however, was known as Goonswarm. Bob and Goonswarm had been locked in a perpetual war for some time. There were many fights, plots and schemes over the course, but neither side really gained any ground. That was all about to change though. Agamar, one of the senior directors of Bob, had infiltrated Goonswarm with an alt account. His plans were simple: gather intel, uncover secrets, and then use that knowledge to destroy them. A sound plan, but with one massive problem. The longer Agamar spied on Goonswarm from within, and the more he flew with them under the guise of gathering intel, the more he began to actually enjoy being with them. And after becoming tired of Bob's elitist and condescending attitude, decided eventually to reveal himself to the Goonswarm Spy Corporation with an offer of defection. Agamar's defection came in February 2009, and as he was at director level within the Bob Alliance, had a lot of power and control. First, he stole everything he was able to from the corporation's holdings. Then he kicked all of the members out of the corporation, kicked all of the corporations out of the alliance, and then disbanded the alliance altogether. In seconds, the massive amount of space that Bob had controlled became uncontested, and Goonswarm instantly began their invasion of Bob's territory, mostly uncontested given the confusion created within the alliance. The once mighty alliance was never fully able to regroup, and had no choice but to retreat into NPC-controlled space. The Bob Alliance had terrorized the universe since it was formed, and it was considered to be at war with everyone, so many people were happy to see the downfall. Little did they know at the time, however, that the victors of this war would go on to have a similar history. You see, when Agamar first decided to defect, he spoke at length with, at the time, Spy Master of Goonswarm, a player in game known as the Mittani, who most listening today will recognize as the now current leader of Goonswarm and its alliances, and much like events of the past, would also go on to have the universe turn against them. But that's another story. While Bob did eventually reform under a different name, this was the defining moment in EVE where the largest player alliance ever created fell, and the word Bob was effectively erased from the game by the actions of just one player. On January the 27th, 2014, one of the biggest and most iconic battles ever in the history of EVE Online was fought. With 7,500 people fighting for 21 consecutive hours, 11 trillion worth of ISK and ships was destroyed. What caused all this to occur, you may ask? Well, somebody forgot to pay their bill. The space in question was held by an alliance called Pandemic Legion, who at this point in time was embroiled in a month-long war against the CFC, a coalition spearheaded by none other than the defeaters of Bob, Goonswarm. The system of BTAC-R 5RB was a key staging system for this war, but on January the 27th, a simple mistake by Pandemic Legion would be costly. In order for alliances to maintain sovereignty of star systems, the alliances were required to pay tax. However, in this case, Pandemic Legion forgot to set up the automatic withdrawal of the funds, and with the bills unpaid, Pandemic Legion suddenly lost control of the system. The CFC quickly noticed what had happened and saw an opportunity, so along with its Russian allies rallied every single pilot they could and swarmed the system to try and quickly take it for themselves. In turn, Pandemic Legion also called upon its allies, and soon a massive defense fleet was in position to try and retain the system. Over 21 hours, players from all over EVE came to join the fight. People not even logged into the game had heard of what was happening and dropped what they were doing to log in and join. As the hours passed, it became clear that the Defense Force along with Pandemic Legion were losing the fight, having destroyed 16 attacking Titans, but losing a massive 59 of their own. Having lost the system to the CFC and with its fleet decimated, Pandemic Legion retreated from the battlefield and the war altogether, abandoning not only BTAC 5RB, but dozens of other systems in the process. Over time, Pandemic Legion would go on to reclaim everything that had been lost that day, but this was a defining moment in EVE given the size of the battle and the amount of ISK that was lost. It was also a defining moment though for the CFC, and became a pivotal moment in time where many see this as the first step in the CFC's transformation into the Imperium, a coalition that would go on to dominate EVE Online for years to come. From its defining moment back in 2014 at the Battle of BTAC 5RB, the CFC, now turned Imperium, had control of much of the galaxy. A number of wars had already been fought against the Imperium, but in 2020 the galaxy had seemingly had enough. Alliances from all over EVE formed into one super coalition known as PAPI in order to take out the Imperium once and for all. In days gone by, the CFC, now turned Imperium, once rid the galaxy of Bob's stranglehold, and in almost poetic cyclic fashion, the galaxy was now joining forces to rid themselves of the Imperium. PAPI had one goal: destroy every system the Imperium owned and destroy all of the structures they had placed. The war started slowly, but did gain some traction, with PAPI forces back in the Imperium further and further into a corner. During one rather small battle that took place in M2 TAC XFE system, a new player fighting with the Imperium noticed that PAPI's warp jammer in the system was unguarded, and in the true spirit of an EVE Online new player, just started shooting it. I'm not sure how long exactly this took the newbie pilot, but they did actually manage to push the jammer into reinforcement, and effectively turned off all of the effects that were intended to stop people jumping into the system via sinos. With the jammer off, this created a window for the Imperium to jump reinforcements directly into the system. But they didn't just call for some backup. The Imperium jumped its entire supercapital and Titan fleets into the system. On seeing this, and not wanting to give the system up, PAPI responded by jumping its own fleets in. A battle that had started that day rather small enough to be called a skirmish actually rather than a battle, had now turned into a massive supercapital brawl, thanks to the actions of one new player who likely didn't even fully comprehend what he had just done. The ensuing battle took over 12 hours, with both sides taking heavy losses, and as a record 257 Titans were destroyed, M2 TAC XFE became a defining moment as the most expensive battle ever fought in the history of EVE Online. Defining moments are happening in EVE every day in some degree or another. While these large-scale, well-known events often take centre stage in the news and media coverage, it's the personal moments that happen on an individual scale that really make EVE what it is today. As new players come into the game, it's easy to look at past events and wish that you had been a part of it. But remember, EVE Online is a persistent world, and you don't need to be part of the past in order to create the future. Thank you all for listening to me. It was amazingly nostalgic to look over these stories and write the script for this. I am truly grateful that I was able to take part in a lot of what is covered in this video. As always, a like and subscribe would be considered. As always, a like and subscribe would of course be appreciated, but please leave a comment below on what your favourite defining moment of EVE has been so far.
You are listening to WEDN EVE Radio, the sound of the cosmos.
You are listening to a special presentation from WEDN EVE Radio, the history of New Eden then and now. We will be right back.
I think I want to get out of this rat hole. I want to get online. I need a computer.
Funding for programming here at WEDN EVE Radio is provided in part by Bob's Shuttle and Transport. With our fleet of loaner shuttles, we can provide you temporary transportation with drop-off and pickup service. Our heavy cargo haulers can meet you on station and transport your ships, equipment, and gear to your destination. Contract and deposit required, including ship insurance. Bob's Shuttle and Transport, moving what you need to where you need in New Eden.
You are listening to a special presentation from WEDN EVE Radio, the history of New Eden then and now.
This is the largest trade hub in EVE Online, a massively multiplayer spaceship game with by far the most realistic financial system in the virtual world. And this is downtown Manhattan, the largest trade hub in, well, the real world. These two regions of concentrated commerce have more than you might expect in common, and what has happened before in this virtual world might be a very good indication of what ends up happening here in the real world. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. In our last video in this series, we explored how EVE Online's massive in-game wars were financed, and, at a cost of hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, why they were financed. Now, a couple people reached out to me at the end of that video and said I missed a very interesting detail: the battle over the in-game tax havens. You see, when a financial system is as realistic as the one in EVE Online, it comes with the same unfortunate realities as well. Most notably, needing to work hard to make in-game money, currency inflation, and of course, paying taxes. So, it's time to learn how money works and take a look at the different taxes players in EVE are expected to pay, how they avoid paying them, and what this can teach us about the fate of New York. So, to start off with, there are the taxes that we explored in our last video that are paid by the individual players on their income and paid to the corporations they are a member of. These are the taxes that in turn go on to fund the wars that make the newspaper headlines, so most of the members of these corporations have no problem paying them. Even if they do decide they'd rather not pay these taxes, it's as simple as finding or indeed forming a corporation with a 0% tax rate. Simple enough. There is, however, a type of tax that is far less popular among the players of this game, because it's much harder to avoid and doesn't get used to fund these epic space battles. These are the sales taxes. Every day, millions of transactions take place in the trade hubs across this virtual galaxy, as everything from basic supplies to huge speculative positions are bought and sold back and forth between the players of the game. Every time this happens, a percentage of the sale is taken out and paid to the Secure Commerce Commission, which is a not-so-subtle in-game equivalent of the American Securities and Exchange Commission. The only difference is that in the real world, the SEC is funded by a tiny fraction of a percent of these transactions, about $22 per $1 million in sales. In EVE Online, however, the transaction tax was around 2%. This by itself is pretty steep, and it's actually one of the biggest ways the game takes money out of active circulation. But things got really serious when this tax was doubled to more than 5% a few years ago. There were two important things that came out of this. The first was that suddenly a video game was making headlines for tax hikes, which is something I suppose. But more importantly, the financial elite of EVE needed to find a way around these new onerous tax rates. This was the solution. This is a Citadel, a space station that players in the game can construct and place almost anywhere in space. The largest of these structures can house their own market exchanges, which means it was possible for the players to build these structures on the outskirts of established trade hubs and undercut the new 5% tax rate being charged in the established centers. This worked really well, but it still caused a few problems. The first was the inevitable race to the bottom. These stations aren't cheap per se, but compared to the potential revenue they could generate as centers of exchange, their upfront cost was practically a non-factor. This meant that everybody with a few billion is to spare threw up these structures everywhere across the galaxy, and started competing with each other. Through the magic of free market competition, this pushed the tax rates in the citadels from just undercutting the 5% charged in the public stations to practically zero. This caused a lot of problems for these would-be market overlords, because at a 0% cut, they were making no money at all, and couldn't afford the ongoing expenses required to run these stations. This meant that most people just let their stations fall into disrepair, but some stuck it out with the promise that if they were the last man standing, they could raise their rates once again and make insane profits off this market. In the real world, we call this anti-competitive pricing, which in brief means pricing your product cheaply, not because it makes good business sense to do so, but because it makes it impossible for people to compete. And once you have no competition for an essential service, like let's say trade, then you can charge whatever you like. Now, in the real world, this particular business practice is illegal, and many major corporations have seen themselves in court for exactly this reason. However, as we've seen before, EVE Online has an almost totally unregulated financial system, so anti-competitive pricing is completely fair game. But there is one other thing that's allowed in EVE that's not so kindly looked upon in the real world, and that's shooting down your competitors' establishments. What this meant was that the real solution to this market competition problem was simply to forcefully remove the competition. Eventually, only the largest and most powerful alliances in the game were able to maintain these structures, and a price equilibrium was established at around 1% for every transaction. This was still more than enough for these empires to maintain and defend these facilities while making a healthy profit. In fact, these private trade hubs have become so lucrative that competition for them has been a major driver of the wars that we explored in our last video. Now, for a video game, this is great. Spaceship shooting at spaceships is what it's all about. But in the real world, governments wouldn't be quite as keen on seeing Amazon Express shipping some heavy artillery fire to Walmart because it happened to steal some of its customers. This means that more subtle measures are taken, but it also means that competition is an ever-present issue for small businesses, big businesses, and even governments. And here's where we can use EVE Online to teach us a lesson about that real-life trade hub. You see, New York is a lot like the old public trade station. It's home to the largest financial center in the world, but also some incredibly high state income taxes. For this reason, the state has seen an increase in its wealthiest residents moving just outside the state lines to New Jersey. New Jersey's state income taxes are far lower than those levied in New York, and it's still close enough to Manhattan that commuting in and out every day is possible. This exodus of wealthy New York workers across the Hudson is part of the reason why New Jersey has recently become the wealthiest state in the US, but this causes a lot of the same issues that we saw in EVE. The process of wealthy individuals moving to more accommodating regions is called capital flight, and there are a number of reasons why it can happen. The most common is to move away from poor living conditions. Wealthy people in nations with high levels of political instability and crime have been willing to spend millions of dollars to set up their families in more stable environments. Think of examples like people fleeing South Africa, and more recently, wealthy Chinese business leaders moving to nations like Canada, Australia, and the States. The other big driver of capital flight is to avoid tax. Although it must be recognized that this is far less common, especially when it involves moving from one country to another. But moving from one state to another, especially when that other state is only a few miles away, well, that's a different story. It's much easier. You don't need to change jobs, you are still amongst your friends and family, and your kids might even still be able to go to the same schools. Now, people moving just outside the commercial centers to avoid paying taxes sounds familiar, right? And so too are the problems. For starters, it becomes harder and harder to maintain public services when the people you are providing those services for are paying taxes in a different state. This means that governments are either forced to run budget deficits or tax the remaining residents more. But if they tax the remaining residents more, this will only accelerate the process of people leaving to avoid said taxes. Of course, the backup solution of waging war on the competition probably wouldn't go over too well here in the real world, but that's okay, because EVE can also give us a glimpse into the future of what happens when you just let this play out. Everything in this video game happens at a much faster pace than it does in the real world, where moving from New York to New Jersey might take a family months of selling their home, buying a new home, convincing their partner, and all that fun stuff. Moving across the borders in EVE might take a few minutes of travel in a spaceship. And what we have seen from this miniature model of the real world is more or less what you would expect. Most business is still done in the old trade hubs, and sure, it has lost some revenue to the low-tax competitors. But at the end of the day, customers from all over the galaxy, or maybe just the planet, know that this is the place where business gets done. And it's a big ask to convince those same customers to go out of their way just so you can enjoy slightly lower taxes. Of course, for really high value deals, you can pass some of these savings along to them. But more often than not, tradition and convenience trumps these marginal savings. So, good news New York, a spaceship video game says you're gonna be alright, and you can breathe a sigh of relief. And even if that all fails, perhaps New York can save all of its problems by taking a cut of the profits its Federal Reserve Bank makes. Go and watch our video on how the Fed became the most profitable entity in history to find out if that's something we should be worried about. Or, if that's too frightening for you, then go and check out our other video on how the wars in EVE Online are financed. If you do enjoy these videos, be sure to like and subscribe to keep on learning how money works.
Programming here at WEDN is made possible partly from contributions from corporations operating in New Eden. If you are interested in contributing to WEDN Radio, you can call us or send email. A list of contributors is available at wednradio.org, as well as news, links, special events, and more. Visit us online today at wednradio.org, and thanks for listening to WEDN Eve Radio, the sound of the cosmos.
Autopilot engaged. Warping to station. Warp drive active.
In science, we have this thing called astronomical units, or AUs. This is a unit of measurement that measure the distance of Earth to the Sun, which 1 AU is equal to 1.495978707 times 1011 meters. Yep, we are talking about scientific notations here. If anything, it is proof enough that anything who uses this stuff is truly expansive and definitely, indubitably larger than Earth. EVE has 17 AU, and for further details, it has 8,000 star systems. And if you really want to know its size in kilometers, then it is 249 sextillion square kilometers, which cements EVE as one of the biggest games out there.
We all have dreams of greatness. At Upwell Consortium, we have made this dream a reality. The Citadel. Your city in the heavens. A testament to the ingenuity and spirit of humankind. Unlock your true potential and build the life we know you deserve. Together, we can and will make it.
Alright, we're coming in close range. Spread the grounds and we land. We need to keep them from MJDing. C-swing, hold position. Intersect us. Get some purples in the middle. Bombs, don't read Hartman. Already down his egg. Alright, carriers are putting fighters out. Frigate, short range and take them out. Dreadnought to our siege green. Citadel, primary is E11 with Apostle. Apostle with primary. Target destroyed.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
You are listening to WEDN Eve Radio, the sound of the cosmos.